What you are about to hear is not fiction. These are 5 locations across the United States, 5 houses, 5 investigations, 5 accounts from the people who lived in them, who investigated them, or who simply made the mistake of getting too close. I spent 8 months collecting these stories. I drove to 4 of these locations myself. I spoke to witnesses in person. I recorded everything. Some of what I found I still cannot explain. I'm not going to try. I'm just going to tell you what happened. Make of it what you will. Let's start at the beginning. Story 1. Blackbush Manor, 1998, rural Kentucky. There is a property outside of Harlan County, Kentucky, that locals have called Blackbush Manor since at least the 1940s. Nobody is entirely sure why it was named that. There are no records of any family named Blackbush ever owning it. The county deed office has records going back to 1887, and not a single owner by that name appears anywhere in the documents. The house itself is a 3-story Victorian structure built sometime around 1889, 14 rooms, a cellar, a detached carriage house at the back of the property that burned down in 1962 under circumstances that were, according to the fire marshal's report at the time, quote, undetermined. The main house still stands. It should not still stand. The structure is visibly deteriorating. The porch has partially collapsed. Several second-floor windows are boarded from the outside. The roof over the east wing sags in a way that suggests the supporting beams underneath have been compromised for years. And yet, nobody tears it down. 3 separate demolition permits have been filed for this property since 1998. All 3 times the crew arrived, walked the property, and left. None of them ever filed the completion paperwork. None of them ever went back. I spoke to the foreman of one of those crews, a man named Gerald, retired now, lives about 40 minutes from the property. He agreed to talk to me on the condition that I not use his full name in anything I published. I'm going to honor that. I'll call him Gerald. Gerald's crew was hired in the spring of 2004 to demolish the structure. He'd done probably 60 demolitions over a 20-year career at that point. He told me he was not a superstitious man. His words, "I've torn down hospitals, churches, a funeral home once. Buildings are buildings. I never felt nothing from any of them." He felt something from Blackbush Manor. He couldn't tell me specifically what. He struggled to articulate it for several minutes during our conversation, which I appreciated because it told me he was actually trying to be accurate rather than just telling me what I thought I wanted to hear. Eventually he said this, and I'm quoting him as closely as I can from my notes. "It wasn't like a feeling of being watched. It was more like, when you walk into a room and you can tell 2 people were just fighting in there, even though they've stopped and they're pretending everything's fine. That feeling. Like something had just happened, like we walked right after something happened and it was still in the air." His crew of 7 men walked the property for approximately 40 minutes. 2 of them refused to enter the house at all. Gerald went in with the remaining 4. They made it to the second-floor landing. Gerald told me there was a room at the end of the second-floor hallway with the door closed. He said he could see light coming from under the door. Not electric light. He said it was the specific warm flicker of candlelight. The house had no electricity connected, had not had electricity connected since 1987. Gerald stood at the end of that hallway for what he described as a long time, long enough that one of his crew members came up behind him and asked him what they were doing just standing there. Gerald pointed at the light under the door. The crew member looked, saw it, stepped back, went back downstairs. Gerald knocked on the door. He knocked 3 times. From inside the room, something knocked back 3 times. Same rhythm, same force. Gerald left the house. His crew left the property. He filed no paperwork. He returned the deposit he'd been paid and told the property owner he was unavailable for that job. He hasn't been back. I asked him if he ever found out what was in that room. He said, "I don't want to know. That's not me being scared. That's me being smart."
I went to Blackbush Manor in March of last year. I went during the day. I want to be transparent about that. I went at approximately 11 in the morning, which I told myself was a practical decision about lighting and safety, and which I now think was something else entirely. The property is accessible from a county road via a long gravel track. The nearest neighbor is approximately a mile away. The house sits in a shallow valley surrounded by old-growth trees on 3 sides. In daylight, the house is deeply unsettling in a way that is difficult to explain rationally. There is nothing specifically wrong with any individual element of it. The architectural details are consistent with the period. The deterioration is what you would expect from a structure of that age with no maintenance. And yet everything about it feels wrong. I have been in abandoned houses before, urban exploration, old farmsteads, derelict industrial buildings. There is usually a melancholy to abandoned structures, a sadness, a sense of something that used to be and isn't anymore. Blackbush Manor doesn't feel sad, it feels occupied. I stood at the edge of the property for approximately 20 minutes before I walked toward the house. I made it to the porch steps. I did not go inside. I can tell you exactly why I didn't go inside. There was a window on the 2nd floor, east side of the structure, that was not boarded. The glass was still intact, which itself was unusual given the condition of the rest of the building. There was someone standing at that window. I know how that sounds. I was looking at a dark 2nd floor window in an abandoned house in daylight, and the mind does things in those situations. The mind finds patterns and shapes in ambiguous visual information. I know that. I am telling you that there was someone standing at that window, still, facing outward, looking down at the property, looking at me. I took photographs. I reviewed them later on my laptop, zoomed in, adjusted the exposure. The window in the photographs is dark, no figure visible. What is visible, if you look carefully at the photographs at the maximum zoom level, is a handprint on the inside of the glass, small, child-sized. I did not go inside Blackbush Manor. I do not plan to. The property records show the house has had 11 registered owners since 1887. Of those 11 owners, 7 died on the property. I am not going to speculate about what that means. I'm just going to tell you the number. 7. And I'm going to tell you that the current registered owner, a property investment company based in Louisville that acquired the deed in 2019, has made no improvements to the property, filed no development plans, and, as far as the county records show, has sent no one to the location since the acquisition. I called the company. The receptionist transferred me to a property manager. The property manager told me they were evaluating options for the Blackbush property. I asked if anyone from the company had visited the site. There was a pause. Then she said, "Not yet. We're waiting for the right time." I asked what would determine the right time. She said she'd have to get back to me on that. She never did.
Story 2. The Pale House, Topeka, 1903. Topeka, Kansas. 221 Delwood Avenue, Topeka, Kansas. It is a 2-story frame house built in 1931. White painted wood siding, or what was white once. It's been gray for as long as anyone in the neighborhood can remember. The paint doesn't peel exactly, it just fades uniformly, like the house is actively resisting color. Locals call it the Pale House, have called it that for at least 30 years. I found this property through a forum post from 2003. A college student, I'll call him Derek, posted a long account of an experience he had while visiting a friend who lived 2 houses down from 221 Delwood. The post has since been deleted, but I found a cached version through a web archive service. Derek's account went like this. He was visiting his friend over a long weekend in October 2003. His friend's house was at 217 Delwood, 2 properties down from the Pale House. On his second night there, Derek woke up at approximately 2 a.m. He was sleeping on a pull-out sofa in his friend's living room, which had a window facing the street. He looked out the window because something woke him, and he wasn't sure what. He saw a woman standing on the sidewalk in front of the Pale House. Middle of the night, October. She was wearing a white dress, no coat. She was facing the house, not moving. Derek watched her for what he estimated was 10 minutes. She didn't move, she didn't look around, she just stood there, facing the house at 2 in the morning in October in a white dress. Derek eventually fell back asleep. When he woke in the morning, she was gone. He mentioned it to his friend at breakfast. His friend went quiet for a moment, then said, "Was she standing at the 3rd or 4th window?" Derek didn't understand the question. His friend explained. Apparently, the woman, or a woman, had been seen standing on that sidewalk on multiple occasions over the years, always at night, always facing the house. And his friend's family, over years of occasional sightings, had noticed that she was always standing at the same 2 positions on the sidewalk, directly in front of either the 3rd or 4th window of the 2nd floor. Derek's friend said his mother had started keeping informal track. The woman appeared more often in front of the 3rd window in summer, and more often in front of the 4th window in winter. His friend's mother had no explanation for why this might be. She had simply observed it. Derek asked his friend who the woman was. His friend said nobody knew. Nobody had ever approached her. Nobody had ever seen her face clearly. By the time anyone thought to go outside to speak to her, she was always gone. Derek's post ended with something that I keep coming back to. He wrote, "The worst part isn't the woman on the sidewalk. The worst part is that my friend told me about the window thing so casually, like it was just a piece of neighborhood information you pass on, like it was normal. His family had been watching this woman stand on the sidewalk for years, and they'd just filed it away. That's what got me, that they'd gotten used to it." I visited 221 Delwood Avenue last year. The house is occupied. I want to be clear about that. There is a family living there currently. I am not going to describe them in any detail that might identify them because I did not ask their permission to include them in this account. What I will tell you is that I knocked on the door and asked if I could speak to whoever had lived there the longest. The woman who answered, middle-aged, glasses,
clearly surprised to have a stranger at her door asking that question, told me she and her husband had been in the house for 11 years. I asked if I could ask her a few questions about the house's history. She said, and I'm being precise here because her exact phrasing stayed with me, she said, I wondered when someone was going to come and ask about that. Not, what do you mean? Not, there's no history to speak of. She said she had been wondering when someone was going to come and ask. She invited me in. We sat in her kitchen for about an hour. She told me 3 things that I'm going to share with you. The first was that every owner of the house, going back as far as she had been able to research, she had done her own research independently before I arrived, had reported the same phenomenon, a feeling of being observed within the house. Not frightening necessarily, just persistent, a sense of another presence, always in the same area of the house, the northeast corner of the 2nd floor. The northeast corner of the 2nd floor is where the 3rd and 4th windows are, the windows the woman on the sidewalk always faced. The second thing she told me was that she had personally seen the woman on the sidewalk twice, both times in winter. Both times the woman was standing in front of the 4th window. Both times she was gone by the time anyone went outside. The third thing she told me, and she said this quietly, in the way people say things they've never said out loud before, was that her youngest daughter, who was 4 years old when they moved into the house and is now 15, had an imaginary friend for about 3 years after they moved in. Not unusual. 4-year-olds have imaginary friends. What was unusual was the imaginary friend's name. The daughter called her imaginary friend Margaret. The woman had never told her daughter about the woman on the sidewalk, had never mentioned any history of the house to her children at all. She did some research after the imaginary friend appeared. The house's records from 1931, the year it was built, list the original owner as a couple named Thomas and Margaret Welford. Margaret Welford died in the house in 1944. The cause of death, listed in the county records, is exposure, in October. The woman on the sidewalk wears a white dress, in October, with no coat.
Story 3. 47 Cotton Ridge, 2011. Cotton Ridge, Tennessee. 47 Cotton Ridge Road sits at the end of a dead-end street in a small, unincorporated community in rural Tennessee. The community itself is called Cotton Ridge. Population, as of the last census, 340 people. The house at number 47 is a brick ranch-style structure built in 1967. It looks completely ordinary from the road. Maintained lawn, covered porch, mailbox with the number painted on the side. A red tricycle in the front yard. The tricycle has been there since 2011. No one has moved it. The family that lived at 47 Cotton Ridge Road moved out in October of 2011 under circumstances that the community has been talking about ever since. I spoke to 4 residents of Cotton Ridge who knew the family. I'm going to call the family the Harmons. That is not their real name. The Harmons, a couple in their early 30s and their 2 children ages 6 and 8, moved in to 47 Cotton Ridge in January of 2011. They were from out of state. The husband had taken a job at a manufacturing plant nearby. For the first several months, by all accounts, everything was normal. In late spring of 2011, the neighbors began to notice things. The first thing they noticed was the writing. Words began appearing on the exterior walls of the house, not spray-painted, not carved, written in what appeared to be permanent marker or something similar, in a large, deliberate, printed hand. The first words appeared on the east wall. They said, "They wait upstairs." The Harmons painted over it within a day or two of it appearing. The neighbor who told me about it said she saw Mrs. Harmon out there in the early morning, working fast, not looking around. She asked Mrs. Harmon what had happened. Mrs. Harmon said, "Kids, you know how it is," and smiled and kept painting. The next words appeared 2 weeks later, on the porch railing this time. They said, "Still here," painted over again within days. Then on the front door, "Come downstairs." Then on the garage wall facing the street, "We see you." Each time painted over quickly. Each time Mrs. Harmon's explanation when neighbors asked, "Vandals, kids, don't worry about it." The neighbor who told me most of this, I'll call her Patty, said that what disturbed her wasn't the writing itself, it was that she never actually saw any vandal. She lived directly across the street. She was home most days. She never saw anyone approach the house. And she noticed the writing was always on a different wall, never the same wall twice in a row. It moved around the house. She said she started to wonder, and she laughed when she said this, embarrassed. She started to wonder if the writing was coming from inside. In August of 2011, Patty saw something that she had not told anyone about until she told me. She was awake late, around midnight, and noticed the lights were on at 47 Cotton Ridge. All of them, every room in the house lit up at midnight. She stood at her window and watched the house for a while, the way you do when something seems off. She saw Mrs. Harmon in the kitchen window, standing at the sink, not doing anything, just standing there looking out. And then, upstairs, in the window of what Patty knew was the children's bedroom, she saw the children, both of them, standing at the window, looking out at the street. In the middle of the night. Not unusual for children to be up late, Patty told me, but what struck her was the way they were standing, side by side, arms at their sides, completely still, faces at the glass, not moving. She said it looked less like two children who had woken up in the night and wandered to the window, and more like two children who had been placed there. She went to bed. She didn't call anyone. In October of 2011, the Harmons left. Not moved, left. Left the furniture, left most of their belongings, left the food in the refrigerator, left the tricycle in the yard. Mr. Harmon's employer said he simply stopped showing up for work one Monday morning. No notice, no explanation. The family has never been located. The house sat empty for 3 years. It was purchased in 2014 by a man from out of state who, according to county records, has never taken occupancy. The tricycle is still in the front yard. The current registered owner pays the property taxes every year, on time, without fail. I tried to contact him. The address listed on the county records turned out to be a post office in Nashville. The post office was closed in 2016. I drove to Cotton Ridge Road last fall. The house looks exactly as it has been described to me. Brick ranch, covered porch, maintained lawn. Someone must be maintaining the lawn. The grass was cut. Mailbox at the road. The tricycle is there. I saw it. Red, child-sized, rusted now from years outside. I parked at the end of the road and looked at the house for a long time before I approached. On the east wall, the wall that faces the neighboring property, there is a section where the paint is slightly different. A rectangle of paint, slightly newer, slightly different shade of brick red. Something was painted over, or painted on, and then covered. I went to the front door, knocked. No answer, no sound from inside. I walked around the side of the house to look at the east wall more closely. The section of newer paint, on close inspection, has something bleeding through it. The paint on top is peeling slightly at the edges. Underneath, in that large, deliberate printed hand, 2 words visible through the peeling paint. Still here. I left Cotton Ridge Road without going any further. On the drive back to the highway, about half a mile from the property, I checked my rear-view mirror. Both children's bedroom windows of the house were visible from that distance. Both windows were lit. The house has no electricity connected. I confirmed this with the county utility records before I visited.
I did not go back. Story 4. The Operator's House, Route 9, 1987, rural New York State. This one came to me through a letter, an actual physical letter sent to a P.O. box I use for correspondence related to this kind of research. Handwritten, 12 pages. The letter was signed with initials only, E.M., and a return address in upstate New York. I wrote back. We exchanged 3 letters. I spoke to E.M. by phone twice. I have confirmed to the best of my ability that E.M. is a real person and that the events described in the letters actually took place. E.M. was 17 years old in the summer of 1987. Her family, parents and 3 children, moved into a house on Route 9 in rural New York State that summer. The house had been a telephone exchange operator's residence in the early part of the 20th century. The operator, who managed a local rural telephone exchange, had lived on site, in the house attached to the exchange building. The exchange was decommissioned in the 1950s. The attached building was torn down. The house remained. The house was purchased by E.M.'s father at what he described as a remarkably good price. He found out why in their first night in the house. The telephone, a standard residential landline, connected and active, rang at midnight. E.M.'s father answered. No one on the line. Static. Then a voice, faint, distant, like a bad connection from a very long way away, saying a name, saying it once clearly, then the line going dead. The name, it said, was E.M.'s mother's name. E.M.'s father told his wife. His wife told him it was a wrong number. They went back to sleep. The phone rang again the following night, same time, midnight exactly. E.M.'s mother answered this time. The voice on the line, same distant bad connection quality, said E.M.'s father's name. Then the line went dead. This continued for 11 nights. Each night the phone rang at midnight. Each night a different family member's name, working through the family, mother, father, eldest child, middle child, youngest child, and then starting again from the beginning. On the 12th night, it rang at midnight as usual. E.M. answered. She was the one near the phone. The voice on the line did not say a name. It said, "Tell your family to leave. Tell them now.
They won't listen to me, but they'll listen to you. Tell them tonight." E.M. asked who was speaking. The voice said, "Someone who stayed too long." The line went dead. E.M.'s family left the house that week. They did not go back. E.M. wrote in her letter, "I am 63 years old now. I have told this story to very few people. My children don't know it. My husband knew it, but he passed 5 years ago. I am telling you because I want it recorded somewhere. I want it for someone, because I have thought about that voice for 40 years. The voice that said it was someone who stayed too long. I don't know who they were. I don't know what happened to them in that house, but they tried to warn us. Whatever they were, wherever they were, they tried to warn us. And we almost didn't listen."
I traced the property through county records. The house on Route 9 is gone. It was demolished in 1993. A self-storage facility occupies the lot now. I spoke to the owner of the self-storage business who bought the property from the estate of the last registered owner. He had no knowledge of the house's history. He was not aware that a house had stood there. He did tell me one thing, unprompted, when I was mentioning that I was researching the history of properties in that area. He said that the unit closest to where the original house would have stood, Unit 9 in the northeast corner of the lot, has the highest turnover rate of any unit in the facility. Renters move in and move out, he said, faster than any other unit. Nobody stays long. Nobody ever explains why. They just leave. Story 5. The Cartwright Place, present day. Location withheld by request. I am not going to tell you where this house is. The family currently living in it asked me not to. I'm going to honor that request. I'll tell you it's in the Midwest, a mid-sized city, a residential neighborhood, the kind of street where people know their neighbors' names and wave from their driveways. I found this family through a mutual contact, someone who knew I was collecting these stories and reached out on their behalf. The family, I'll call them the Nelsons, reached out because they wanted to talk to someone, not the police who they felt would not take them seriously, not a paranormal investigator because they didn't want their story sensationalized, just someone who would listen and record it accurately. The Nelsons have lived in their house for 6 years, a couple, late 30s, and their teenage son. For the first 4 years, nothing happened. They loved the house. They told me that. They want that on record. They love their house. They love their neighborhood. Whatever is happening, they are not planning to leave. That tells you something about the Nelsons. That tells you they are not people looking for attention, not people trying to construct a story. People who are making things up usually don't lead with how much they don't want to leave. It started in year 5 with the photographs. Mrs. Nelson is a photographer, amateur but serious, shoots on film. She developed a roll of film she had shot around the house and neighborhood over a period of about 2 weeks. Ordinary domestic photographs, the house, the garden, her son, her husband. In 3 of the photographs, taken at different times on different days in different parts of the house, there is a figure, the same figure, in the background of each photograph, standing in a doorway, standing at the end of a hallway, standing at the far end of the kitchen. The figure is blurred, always slightly out of focus, in a way that the foreground subjects are not. She showed me the photographs. I examined them carefully. I cannot explain the blur as a camera artifact. The blur is specific to the figure and does not affect anything near the figure. The figure appears to be a person, standing upright, facing toward the camera. Mrs. Nelson does not recognize the figure. Her husband does not recognize the figure.
Her son, and this is the part that stopped me, her son said when shown the photographs that the figure looked like someone he had seen in the house before. His parents asked him where. He said in his room at night, standing near the window. He said he had seen it multiple times over the past year. He had not mentioned it because he thought he was dreaming. When I spoke to the son directly, he's 16, articulate, clearly not someone who dramatizes things. I asked him to describe what he had seen. He said, "It just stands there, by the window. It doesn't do anything. It doesn't look at me directly. It kind of looks past me, like I'm not the one it's interested in." I asked him if he was frightened. He thought about it seriously, then said, "Not of it exactly, more of what it's looking for." I have thought about that answer a great deal since our conversation. What it is looking for. The Nelsons have done everything you can reasonably do. They had the house inspected, structurally, electrically, for gas leaks, everything normal. They consulted with a psychologist who suggested the photographs might be artifacts and the son's experiences might be related to a developmental sleep phenomenon. Reasonable explanation. Except the psychologist hadn't seen the photographs. I've seen the photographs. I don't have a reasonable explanation. The Nelsons are still in the house, 6 years. They have made a decision that a lot of people would not make. They have decided that this, whatever this is a part of their life now, and that it does not define their life, and that they are not going to let it take their home from them. Mrs. Nelson said something to me as I was leaving that I wrote down immediately because I didn't want to misquote it. She said, "We used to be afraid of what we didn't understand. Now I think, what if it doesn't understand us either? What if it's just as confused as we are? I feel less afraid when I think of it that way." I drove away from their house thinking about that. I'm still thinking about it.
5 houses. Blackbush Manor, still standing, still occupied by something. 221 Dell Wood, a woman in a white dress looking for something in a room where a woman died in October with no coat. 47 Cotton Ridge, a family gone, a tricycle rusting, words bleeding through fresh paint on a wall. Route 9, a house that no longer exists, and a voice on a dead phone line warning a family to leave before it was too late. And somewhere in the Midwest, a family still in their house, a figure in photographs, a 16-year-old boy asking the right question, not "what is it?" but what is it looking for? I've been collecting these accounts for a long time now, and I've noticed something that connects all 5 of these stories, something that nobody said explicitly, but that runs through all of them like a wire. In each of these cases, the thing wasn't violent, the thing wasn't threatening in any direct way. It knocked back 3 times. It stood on the sidewalk. It wrote on the walls. It called on a phone that didn't work. It stood by a window. It was present, insistently, persistently present, like it needed to be seen, like it needed someone to know it was there. I don't know what that means. I don't know if it means anything, but I think about that woman on Dellwood Avenue, standing on the sidewalk at 2 a.m. in October in a white dress, facing a window, for years, decades maybe. She's trying to get someone's attention. She has never gotten it, and she keeps showing up. I find that the most frightening thing of all. Not the haunting, the persistence, the not giving up. Whatever these things are,
Whatever they want, they are very, very patient, more patient than we are, and they have nothing but time. Sleep well. Check your windows before you do.